Welcome to There Is a Method to the Madness. My name is Rob Maxwell and I'm an exercise physiologist and personal trainer. I'm the owner of Maxwell's Fitness Programs and I've been in business for the past 28 years. All right, today I'm going to dive into gear, gadgets, tricks, and all that good stuff, and let's see what research supports and let's see what really helps us get fit. This question came up with somebody and it actually comes up a lot, and it's also something that I notice, and I've noticed it a lot more over the last decade or so. But essentially the question was, what really helps us regarding different kinds of shoes and bikes and clothes and gloves and all that good stuff. So let's tackle it. First, I want to give you an extreme example of what I see pretty often. For my cardio, I like to run, I like to bike, and I like to go down to the trail down in Edgewater that extends pretty far down. It can go all the way to Titusville or Sanford if you go in the other direction. So check it out if you ever love to get outdoors and do this stuff. And you'll notice all kinds of different folks out there, which is great. You'll notice some people who are, on real beat up bicycles, and they're not wearing what you would call cool workout shorts or whatever, but they're absolutely doing it. And then you'll see people out there with the most tricked out $10,000 bike possible, with the helmets and the gear and all that, and I'll explain what I mean by helmet in a second. So you see a whole spectrum of different types of people, and the reality is both are getting what they need out of the workout, and I would argue that those with the least amount of gear, gadgets, and assistance are getting more out of the workout. So it really comes down to, what are you trying to get out of the workout? So I was running, and I was running with a friend, and this guy goes flying in the other direction on his bike, and he had the perfect bike, whatever, and I don't really have a problem with that. I've spent a pretty good amount of money on bicycles, and I think that could be a pretty good investment as long as you don't go too insane. Some people are spending 10 grand or more for their bicycles these days, and they're pretty average in their abilities and all. I mean, whatever. I don't believe I'm gonna ever. I know I'd never spend anywhere close to that, and I don't anticipate doing that. But he also had on one of those aerodynamic helmets that you would see the professional cyclists wear in the Tour de France. So if you've ever seen them, for those that aren't really into biking and outdoor cardio, you probably have no idea what I mean. But it goes well beyond a normal bicycle helmet, which is, of course, designed to protect your head if you crash. It's something that swoops partway down your back. I mean, quite frankly, it looks ridiculous. And if you've watched Tour de France prologues, and the prologues are the individual time trials where the individuals are trying to get as much time distance against the clock that they can. And they're out there all by themselves, and so aerodynamics matter, and they're also making millions of dollars for how they place, so it makes a little bit of sense. And I always kind of chuckle when I see situations like this, because you're out there to get fit. I'm assuming this person is not a professional cyclist, and I believe even if they were being down there on that trail on Saturday morning, all by themselves, training, I just don't see where a professional with a high self-esteem and whatever would do that. In other words, my friend brought up a great point. She said, you would think that if they're training for a race, that they would want a disadvantage during their training and then be able to use the advantages when they race. And I laughed and said, well, of course, that's the smart thing to do. But many people are out there to show off their egos. so they can post their splits or time on their whatever it's even called. Thankfully, I don't even know, but there's a social media app just for that, and Sparta, I don't know. Now people are going to make fun of me for not knowing this, but in a way I'm proud to not know it. But they can post their data, upload it directly up, and everybody can give them a pat on the back for that. So a lot of people are basically using the advantages during training, when if they really wanted to get better at their sport, they would use disadvantages for their training. And then if they were competing against something of relevance to them, they could pull out the advantages and race better. But I don't think a lot of people do that. I think a lot of people are investing all this money in things that make a marginal difference in their fitness, is the bottom line. And to each his own. You want to spend that kind of money on these types of things that you think are going to give you the upper hand, go for it. But to answer the question of this person and other people, it's kind of a two-part question. Number one, do these types of things really add up to greater performances if you're an athlete? If you are, everybody's an athlete, so let me take that back. If you're competing against something, the answer is pretty much no. They're going to give you a marginal advantage. And I heard a guy I like to listen to the other day, Ryan Holiday, it's a podcast I listen to, and he said he found it really interesting that people like put 100% investment into something that's going to give you like less than a 1% return. And then they don't invest a lot in something that's going to give you 100% return, because it always comes back to what's harder. And before I elaborate on that, getting back to the other part of the question, which doesn't have to do with people trying to compete, but people simply trying to get fit, which really is the whole name of the game. So when I say simply, I don't mean to lower that. I mean, fit is what we're really trying to do. And if we happen to find a sport we can compete at to help us stay fit, then that's great. But we're physically active for the most part, so we can improve our fitness and health. And the answer to that question then is an absolute no. All these bells and whistles aren't going to help us get more fit, and they could actually take us backwards because it gives us too many advantages. So, but back to the performance thing, so what would be something that we could invest in to give us 100% return? Well, how about our own bodies? A lot of these triathletes and cyclists will literally spend thousands more on an already very expensive bicycle to get titanium in the lowest, the lightest metals they can get, to shave off less than a quarter of a pound off their bike, literally to shave off ounces. But they won't change their diet and lose 5 pounds. I mean, that's ridiculous, right? I mean, listening to this podcast, and if you're objective and if you're not one of them, you're going to go, well, that's just silly. But people do it all the time. I raced with a guy, I used to compete with a guy, and he was a cyclist, and he, I think, was the smartest one in the group. I don't even think he competed a whole lot, actually. He was competitive as an athlete, though. And I remember he would deflate some of the air out of his tires, and he would not wear the most aerodynamic clothing, and he would not wear what we call use what we call aero bars on the bicycle, because he wanted a disadvantage when he trained. So he wanted more drag. That's the opposite of being aerodynamic. You're experiencing wind drag. So he wanted more drag, so he got stronger at pushing through the wind, so he got less aero. He took some air out of his tires, not to the point where you can't ride them, of course, but just not as much as you could pump them up to legally without popping, to get greater rolling resistance, or less rolling resistance, I should say, because the harder the tires are, the greater the less rolling resistance you have, therefore you can turn them over quicker. So he would let some out, so he would have to fight that, so he had more resistance. And he would wear clothes that were kind of heavy, therefore it made him heavier. I mean, that's the smart thing to do. And Holiday, the guy I listened to, was interviewing an ultra marathon runner, one of the greatest in the world right now. And she said something that her coach always asks her is, do you want to be fast now or do you want to be fast later? And of course, if you're a professional athlete, hopefully you say later, because now usually means you're training right now. So do you want to like use everything you got right now in training, or do you want to be fast when it counts, which is on race day? And to do that, then you would maybe pull out some bells and whistles, which again might give a professional athlete a 1% return. They're going to give the rest of us hacks little to none, but you know, if you want to spend all that money, go for it. And the way to be your best on race day, of course, would be recovered, which you do that by keeping your ego in check. So when you are out training and you see other people, you're not trying to show off and keep up with them or go beyond them. You're sticking to your training plan because you're disciplined and you want to be fast later, not now. I've been doing this a very long time, and I would say that most people do the polar opposite, and they give all they have when they're around people in training, and then they wonder why the results are less than ideal. So the answer to this question, of course, I'm sure you already picked up on, is that no, that most of these tools really don't help. They cost money, and people, from my experience, are far more willing to throw their money around than throw their effort around. And so if they think there's something out there that's going to give them an advantage, they're going to jump on it, which again, I'm not against if you're doing it for the right reasons. If you're doing it because you're really busting your butt and you're training and you're doing everything you can to get more physically fit, and you've got extra money to spend and you're willing to spend it for something that's going to help you on race day, great. Just don't think that it's giving you this huge advantage. So let me now finish this last bit talking about what studies say are the things that really, really do improve us, all right? Now, if you're talking little things like gloves, yeah, gloves can help you do pull-ups, sure, not beat up your hands. That's fine. There aren't any special pants or shirts, or people are going to spend $200 on their workout outfit. I mean, that's great. Again, if you've got the money to spend and you want to look good, that's great. Some of those workout outfits make you look very nice, and if it makes you feel better about yourself, then more power to you. But if you think there's something in the Velcro or the Lycra, not the Velcro, if you're wearing Velcro, that'd be pretty funny. The Lycra pants or whatever giving you some huge advantage. I mean, there's really not. There's just nothing to that, but if it makes you feel good about yourself, go for it. So some things help us. I mean, the right tennis racket that feels the best in our arm, that produces the least amount of injury and the greatest power, that's a great thing to have. The bicycle that works well for you. I mean, I spend some money on the bikes. I don't spend nearly as much as some people, but it's not because I'm looking for the lightest bike. I never look at that option. I mean, that's just kind of silly. Get the lightest bike possible and then gain a few pounds. I mean, that's silly. I look for the bike that I think is the best value, that has the best feel to me, the best fit to me. That's what I look for. And all that's great. But what really leads to the greatest performances, so to say, and studies have confirmed this, is, I'm just going to say genetics. That's number one. Let's throw that out because we have no control over that. We are what we are, and I think everybody listening to this already knows that. So they know like their ceiling, so to say, or close to their ceiling on their whatever they're doing. They're cycling, they're running, they're lifting weights, they're bodybuilding, they're tennis, they're golf. I mean, they know they're not Tiger Woods, or maybe you are, but you know it already regardless. So genetics we just throw out. So then after that, what's left? Well, the things that we can't really put money on. And number one is, do you actually enjoy what you do? That is so important. Recent studies have proven, and old studies displayed it, but now it's been proven that if you really, really enjoy your training, you're going to put more into your training. So if those little bells and whistles make you feel good about yourself and you feel good about them and makes you feel faster, then go for it. But the reality is, if you enjoy what you're doing, for example, the ultra marathoner I listen to on this podcast, she's a professional and she's the greatest in the world. She beats the dudes, which is pretty impressive. She loves to run. She absolutely loves to run. So she's not forced to run. Now, if you've ever been around younger cross-country runners in high school, which I've trained quite a few, some of them do it because they kind of have to, like their parents wanted them to do it, or they have a whole lot of ability for it, but they really don't enjoy it. Getting them all the bells and whistles in the world and all the coaching in the world isn't going to help if they don't love it, because if they're having a bad day that day, like they're in a bad mood, you're going to see a really subpar effort. So the reality is, pick the sport you love. And if you love to do it, you're not going to have to do a lot to get you psyched up to do it. I think the only thing you can do to affect that is you can suck the life out of it by overdoing it and doing things you think you have to do. In other words, if you love to run and you already push yourself naturally because you enjoy it, you probably don't need these really super structured intervals that you think are going to give you this 0.25% advantage, because you're already pushing yourself. And if you do that, again, you're going to suck the enjoyment out of it. So you've got to find a way to do what you love. And if you love what you do, that's very, very critical. So feeling good about what you're doing is utmost important. The second thing is simply putting in the work, getting the practice reps in there. That's what's important. That's going to give you a ton of payoff, meaning that first you love what you do, and then you're making time for what you do, and you're putting in the work that you need to do. You're putting in the practice reps that you need to do, whatever that might be. I mean, in most things, I don't want to totally put a number by it, but in most things, to get proficient at something, you need to do it at least 3 times a week. So if you're a tennis player and you love tennis, and you love it and you want to get better at it, so you already got the first part, you love it, you got to put in the work. So usually 3 times a week it's something that's going to give you the reps, and if you're really experienced, you can back off that a little bit, but if you love it and you got time, you're probably not going to. You typically need to run a few times a week to get proficient at it. Swim, same thing, lift. So you got to put in the work, and a lot of people don't want to necessarily do that. Again, I got to take the love it out of it for them. If they love it, they want to do it. And the thing that might be confusing you right now is you think, well, if somebody's doing something but they don't love it, then why are they doing it? And the answer is ego. There's a lot of people that pick up different things that they think are going to give them praise and respect and pats on the back. And they don't necessarily love it, but they do it because maybe other people are doing it, or it's the thing to do. When I was a kid growing up, I'll use an example because I grew up in New Smyrna down there on the beach, and surfing was it. Surfing was that thing you better be able to do if you want to be cool. Now, I don't want to say I loved it, but I liked it. I thought it was cool to do, but the reality is, oh man, I sucked at it. And if anybody, like any of my old friends from there listen to this podcast, they're gonna laugh, But I went out and I got a nice board and spent some money on it, or my mom did, and I'd bring it to the beach and I'd stand there, and I'd want to be this surfer guy. And of course, most people know we call that a poser, right? I didn't love it. I did love the beach and I love the ocean and stuff, but it just wasn't very good. So, that's a good example, and I can goof on myself on that. It's all well and good. And then years later, my daughter got into it, and she was a lot better than me. And so I would go out with her, and I sucked still, but I went out there with a different mentality of I just want to do something with her, and she was better than me. And little funny side story, I remember it was probably the last time I surfed with her. I was paddling out, and as soon as I laid on the board to paddle out, I broke a rib. Yep, true story. broke a frickin' rib just laying down. I mean, gosh, talk about getting older. I mean, we laughed about it. But anyway, so people will do things because their ego tells them it's the cool thing to do, and then they get all the gear and everything, but they don't really love it. So, I'm going to wrap it up by just saying that you have to love what you're doing. You have to find a way to love it. I mean, not everybody loves every second. If you love running, then I do. You don't love every second running. I mean, there are days it's a struggle to do it. I ran this morning. I'm like, I added on to my walk to warm up because I just didn't feel like starting. It's gonna hurt. It's gonna, not the joints, but I mean, you're gonna feel uncomfortable. You can't run and be comfortable. I mean, it's impossible. So I was putting it off because I knew I had a later client for me. I can start as early as 6:30. But today I didn't have one till 8. So I'm like, I could take advantage of that, and I walked an extra lap because I just didn't feel like starting. And then, of course, once I get into it, I'm naturally glad I did. It takes a few minutes. And then when I'm done, I feel great. And that's what people have to understand when we say, do you love it? You don't love every second of it. I mean, if you play tennis, you probably don't like it when it's 95 degrees and you're having an off day and people are blistering shots down the line on you. It probably pisses you off. But you finish and you want to come back the next time better. So you love the sport. You don't love every second of it. If you bike and you ride in a group, that can be a very painful experience because people in the group may be pushing the pace faster than you're comfortable, and you're barely holding on to the draft of the guy in front of you. You're definitely not loving it at the time. As a matter of fact, you're most likely hating life at that moment. But when you're finished, you're glad you did it because you challenged yourself and you pushed yourself and you allowed yourself to be pushed. So ultimately, you love this sport, but you don't love every second of it. And that's true for everything I can bring up here. Weightlifting too. I love working out. I love lifting weights. I love doing pull-ups, push-ups, all that stuff. I love all of it. It's all good for me. Do I love every second of it? No. There are some days I know I have to do some exercises that I don't particularly care for because it might be a muscle group that I don't enjoy training, but I know I have to do it because I need to keep my body in balance, and that's harder for me to do, so I got to trick myself into finding fun ways to do it. But I love the overall experience, so we're not going to love every second of it. So what's going to give you 100% payout on your investment is finding what you love to do and putting in the work. That's going to give you 100% investment. That's going to give you 100% return on your investment. Absolutely. The other stuff is going to give you a very small return on your investment. So I hope that helps. Be on the lookout for the guys with the helmets down there. They're pretty entertaining to watch. To each his own, I get it. It's just, God, some people can take themselves so freaking serious. It is so hysterical. You see people at the pool kind of do it too. They get the draft suits that, the drag suits, I'm sorry. They get the drag suits that some of these Olympians wear for training. It's like, dude, you're not going to the Olympics, but okay, just should be happy you're out here swimming, putting in the work today. Again, to each his own, but, just if you see that, don't think you got to do it to be your best, because you absolutely do not. To be your best, you got to love it. You got to put in the work. And I'll leave it at that. I want to now finish up by thanking our sponsors, Jonathan and Lynn Gildon of the Gildon Group at Realty Pros. They're the absolute best. They have the most 5-star reviews, and that's pretty darn awesome. If you need them to sell your house or find you a house, please give them a shout out. They can be reached at thegildongroup.com. It's an awesome website, and I'll put that in the notes. thegildongroup.com. Until next time, be max fit and be max well.